So we're about a week and a half since CitizenCon, and I have allowed my copium tanks to empty and my thoughts to be cleared a bit before making this video. I had to give it time because I've spoken so much about the game that I thought Star Citizen needed to be for me. Some of you agreed with those things, and some of you didn't, and that's to be expected. We all like different things, right? But this year, we really got to hear finally about what Star Citizen is, not what it might be, what it's intended to be. And I think for the first time ever, I now know that Star Citizen is the game for me, potentially. I always thought it could be, but I was never sure which direction the game would go. I'm not even sure Chris knew. So I wanted to take the time out to take a lot of what was said in a number of different panels and talks at CitizenCon and tie them together a bit and explain why I felt they might be on the right track and why Star Citizen can really maybe be my forever game, right? It was also the year where CIG finally accepted that they did not have to reinvent the wheel on every feature. They could simply just be inspired from other games that were successful. I will also try my best to discuss a lot of the unknowns. They were pretty darn vague, and probably because they don't want to commit too much just yet. There are a lot of decisions that can make or break this game for a lot of people, and a lot of those decisions are still questions that are left unanswered. And yes, most of this stuff is probably years away. But man, it is such an easier way to be patient when you know what they're trying to build and that what they're trying to build is a game that I want to play, not having to hope that they are. Before we get to the first topic, though, let me share with you today's sponsor. Thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring today's video. Manta Sleep makes the world's best sleep masks and functional sleep accessories. And with the new puppy in my life, I am finding myself using Manta Sleep products more than ever before. I'm sneaking a nap whenever I can find a moment. Their masks have been a part of my nightly and now naply routines since they first came to my door. My go-to lately has been the silk mask. It is super lightweight. You barely notice it's there. And you also notice that 100% of the light is not there with blackout eye cups. But this week I tried a new mask, the weighted sleep mask from Manta, and I have to say I really like it. It's really relaxing, and I use it during all my naps now. On the tougher days, especially when sitting at the computer all day, I found myself using the Manta neck heating pad to soothe my neck and shoulders, and a real sleeper is the Manta Sleep silk pillowcase. My wife already told me she's going to steal it the moment I'm done recording this. It's so nice to sleep on. So if you're interested in improving your sleep and becoming more productive, then join the pro nap movement at mantasleep.com and use code SaltEMike for 10% off your order. Once again, that's code SaltEMike for 10% off your order at mantasleep.com. All right, and back to the video. I think to start, we have to talk about the foundation of everything, and that is resource gathering. There's still a lot here that we don't know, even though it is probably the most polished gameplay we have in the game currently with mining and salvage, right? And to a much smaller extent, harvesting. What we know is that the current loops like mining and salvage are somewhat there, but are lacking in a lot of places like resource distribution or just really weird half-baked implementations like structural salvage, right? Simply not making a lot of sense. What we learned at CitizenCon, even at last year's, is that ore, gas, or liquid, that's right, more than just rocks and metal, will be in deposits underground that can be extracted and refined via base building. Will that replace mining? Obviously not. They sold mining ships and salvage ships, right? Will they ever create really large mining nodes and asteroids that will satisfy the idea that miners want to mine and not scan for rocks for hours? We don't know this. What we learned in the first panel is that they're going to have NPC bases around a lot of mining resources, and there will be many of them. Does this mean that iron is under the ground and there will also be a ton of iron above the ground? Why does that even matter? It matters because resource gathering should not be a riskless endeavor, even in a Stanton system. But it also should be fun. Finding a field of rocks that contains, let's just say, 10 full loads of the largest mining ship that's flyable on a planet or moon means you might need friends. Or for solo players, you might have to take multiple trips back and forth. That gives you, the player, the ability to do exactly what you want if you like mining. And that's mine. No more scanning for the next rock that's going to give you 2 SCU of Bexelite and a bunch of waste material. But taking multiple trips also means more opportunity to be found by other players or NPCs that might want to share in your spoils, if you will. Then I was blindsided by a feature that I never would have guessed would be in Star Citizen, and that's material quality. The higher the quality of the harvestable, the better the stats it will provide during the crafting or refining process. The highest value materials will be earned in the riskiest systems and the content in the game. Now, keep in mind throughout this video, it is probably the glue that will hold the entire game together. Now, I wasn't exactly sure what to call this next section, but the fact that they are willing to change their minds on what Star Citizen has always been to create instance content for players to enjoy without having to deal with a lot of the completely open MMO experience that would absolutely appeal to a lot of players, right? This is something that's high on my list and has always been in MMOs that I played. I absolutely enjoy and love grinding PvE content, especially the kind that makes you think and challenges you, but rewards you with items or power that you can utilize in other avenues like PvP. This to me is, while not instanced, is where the sandworm comes in. I will have to form a small party and work together with a group to manage the worm's mechanics. And once we kill it, we are provided with a bounty of extremely useful crafting materials. What these do, we don't exactly know yet, but they're said to be very useful. The focus on org and group play was huge for me. The MMOs that I enjoyed the most had really good org tools that allow for their members to enjoy the most amount of content with the least amount of friction. The social panel at CitizenCon this year tells me that this is absolutely their intention. One of the biggest pain points in the current experience is the inability to tell who is who while traveling in the verse. Doing the basic differentiation of coloring players' names based on their relationship to you is a must-have. Many tools like the calendar, org tags, member management, and so on were features that are all pretty basic and expected. What I felt was lacking from this discussion was how orgs will use their player bases to mobilize effectively. Will there be taxes? How will they reward their members for good deeds? There was a little hint in the event box at some point, but there is still a ton of unknowns around this for now, so I will leave it there at the moment. But orgs will absolutely come up again in this discussion. Territory, a static place to call home. That's not just crafted for you, but by you for whatever your needs or wants may be. If you're mainly a combat pilot, you may want a hangar or two. But if you are into industry gameplay like I am, my base would look entirely different than yours. A proper org base absolutely was one of my must-haves. And they touched on things like permissions, org hangars, and storage very briefly. So this is certainly a part of CIG's vision as well. Like with most things, we don't know the finer details though. Like, will players with too many ships be able to share them with org members? I certainly hope so. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of dusty ships in our hangars. The endgame for orgs was also shared. I thought it was incredibly over the top, but there are player-crafted stations in the plans. I think many players like myself thought this was cool, but also really not attainable by most people. I probably will never own one of these, but I was kind of just hoping that I would be able to interact with one. Something I won't touch on too much, but certainly plays a role here, is the fact that there'll be a main story quest, which will be referred to the MSQ from here on out. Completing the MSQ will grant players citizenship. The previous plan was to earn this by completing Squadron 42, the single-player campaign set in the Star Citizen universe, and you would get your honor that way. What that affords players is the ability to place bases in high-security, highly desirable UEE land that is completely unrateable, but that also will have a fee associated with owning that land in a form of a tax. We saw there was a weekly tax on a UI during the show. Hard to say how valuable this land will be. Having a base of operations that you can just relax and enjoy something, I absolutely want in Star Citizen. Sometimes you just want to chill out, craft some things, and take it easy. Or if you're a large org, you might want to provide a safe place for staging, respawning, meetings, crafting, all sorts of things for your members. The part that I'm most excited for about bases is places like Pyro, because the material quality is higher there. Bases to extract that material will be in demand by the player base, right? Because of that, so will players that want to raid your base. And that brings us to the awesome gameplay system that I cannot wait to engage with. Bases that have defenses cannot be neutralized by only ships. CIG recognized that what makes their game so special is the fact that you can fly a ship, yes, but you can also get out and run around a planet. So they decided that shields that protect bases from ships can only be disabled by a player on foot. Then you can attack the base how you wish. This is content that solo players all the way to the largest orgs really kind of need to be able to enjoy, right? But they added an extra wrinkle here just for the largest orgs. The Seal Tokens program will be a 24/7, 365-day gameplay loop that is pitting the largest orgs and the most organized ones against each other, competing in Pyro for control over basically shield locations and their core. Your org is only awarded tokens while you're in control of some of or one of these locations. Each week, you will bid your tokens to control some of the network's shield power. Only a handful of orgs or locations can have access to the shield power at any given time. You will have your base be invulnerable if you have control of the shield power for that week, then it resets. This is across all shards as well, so players will be competing not just with players on their current server, but across all servers. Are you starting to see it all come together? Resource gathering is meaningful. The best stuff is in the riskiest places. To guarantee getting the best stuff, you will likely have to work together with a big alliance or org to build and protect a base that is extracting those materials. What are the real question marks here? We don't exactly know how they plan on dealing with offline raiding or bases that were built on one shard when players are playing on another. Will that base suddenly appear? Will it be interactable? We don't know yet, but most of the questions around bases and stations, kind of all the warfare, falls under the will server meshing even work limitation, right? We have no idea. Then we come to the best part for me, but it's really kind of controversial because it's a bit of a divergence from the original pitch of the game. Star Citizen was all about player skill, and that was it. There would be no experience gain, just your inputs versus mine. A lot of people like that, and it worked when the game was only an arena ship combat sim. But as more of the game and more of the persistent universe was developed, players like myself found themselves bored with very little purpose. What is the point of super huge planets with tons of resources if there's no added value to the player for making use of them? Crafting was inevitable, and specifically crafting that provides an advantage to players no matter what type of gameplay they're into. Crafting has a ton of depth, with the material and its quality coming into play by adding bonus stats to the base stats of an item. You can even increase the base stats by leveling your items as well. Most of the items will level up to level 3, but ships being able to level up to 5. That's right, we can craft ships and vehicles as well. Gone is, well, sort of, we'll get to that, the need to buy ships on the website and just craft them. You won't be able to just craft anything, though. You have to earn or find blueprints by playing the game in order to craft items. The more you play the game or work with other players, the more you will get out of the crafting system. I think I could probably talk for hours on crafting, but I'll leave it here. Materials have value because you can craft items that give you a tangible bit of progression in the type of gameplay you enjoy. I enjoy being a small cog in a really big wheel. I want to help supply orgs that compete in Pyro against those other orgs for control over the best resources. My small contribution, whether it's as a solo player in a small group or part of a massive alliance, can have an impact because of the symbiotic nature of all of the content talked about at the event. Orgs, bases, gated resources, factions/guild warfare are all must-haves in an MMO for me. But most people know that a lot of the time you spend playing an MMO is actually alone. Whether it's doing some PvE content to gain XP, or in Star Citizen's case, reputation, or PvPing a small group and stealing some of their valuable stuff. The foundation of today's MMO is built upon the solo player's experience. The event focused mostly on the really cool things that you could do in a group. I think this is because they really wanted to hammer home to their player base that they know what an MMO looks like, right? I still saw a solo player experience strongly throughout CitizenCon. I could still participate in nearly every single gameplay loop, just in different ways. I would obviously have a smaller base. I could still PvP. I may not be able to PvP against a 30-man Zerg, but I can absolutely find some valuable resources, but I might not own an invulnerable base to extract tons of them. One of the big question marks for me is, will we be able to build smaller space stations like we saw at the end of the show? Players might not want their bases on a planet. They might want to hide in Aaron's Halo. Can we do that? Solo or smaller groups should not be gated from content like building your home in the stars. Resources with unique qualities that give tangible bonuses, orgs that work together to make the most of those resources, base building to ground yourself or your group in the absolutely stunning worlds that CIG has created, while also unlocking features like crafting or massive org battles is something I cannot wait to see at a minimum, but hopefully participate in. Instance content that smaller or larger groups can participate in to challenge themselves on the PvE front is huge for me. And finally, crafting everything I need to take down those PvE, PvP challenges, or simply being self-sufficient in a sandbox, like so many of us dreamed in a game like this, all coming together cohesively on paper in Star Citizen 1.0. On paper is the key here. We don't know the details. We know very little about how Star Citizen's absolutely game-breaking funding model will play into this. The insurance discussion during the event could really make or break a lot of what I talked about today, as a matter of fact. If players don't need items crafted because they just get them right back without proper balance to the cost of the higher levels of insurance and warranties earned throughout even making purchases on the website, will players have the incentives to go out, mine, craft, base build, and fight? I don't know. What I do know is that through all of the unknowns and all of the downsides, I feel like CIG has expressed that they have a reasonable idea of what a good MMO looks like. And I fully plan on being along for the ride to see if they can actually build it. If they do, I think this will be the game that I'll play until I'm probably too old to play games. That's where we are right now, and I will leave you with a few questions that, honestly, I don't have the answers to. Do you think they can do this? Do you think they can do Star Citizen 1.0? Do you think they even want to? Or are they just trying to appeal to a different player base to keep this train rolling? How far away will they stray from this vision in the short term or the longer distance? All valid questions. I think I'll see a variety of different answers to in the comments. Thank you for watching today, and I'll see you guys in the next one.